If you've ever felt like you're failing at healing because you've had a bad week after a great month, this episode is for you. And if you're tired of measuring your progress against an imaginary finish line where goalposts are continuously moving, I want you to pause and take a deep breath because we're about to reframe everything. I'm Nicole, and this is Stage 4 Thriver, a podcast for people at all stages of cancer who are looking for evidence-based, integrative approaches that complement conventional treatment. Today, we're talking about one of the most important truths in the healing journey, and that is healing is not linear. It's messy, it's unpredictable, and no two healing journeys ever look exactly the same. Let's dive in. Here's what nobody tells you when you start this journey. Healing doesn't follow a neat upward trajectory. Now, we're kind of conditioned to think of recovery as like climbing stairs, right? Each step we take is a nice upward trajectory, just leading us to the top. But healing just doesn't look like that at all. It's more like navigating terrain that is constantly shifting beneath your feet. Some days you're on solid ground, other days you're in quicksand, and both of those are equally part of the way forward. Now, as a Stage 4 Thriver myself, I have had my own experience with this reality, and I've also guided other people through it. I've had periods where I felt invincible, where my energy returned, where hope felt tangible, and then I've had moments that would follow that, sometimes just days later, where fatigue would crash over me like a wave, where the fear would creep back in, and where I questioned whether I was actually making any progress at all. And today, I want to normalize all of that mess, the uneven reality of healing. We're going to talk about the progress that happens alongside of setbacks, why plateaus aren't failure, and the difference between emotional relapses and actual regression, and how to measure healing beyond the metrics that conventional medicine gives us. Because here's the truth. Nonlinear healing isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's evidence that you're human, that your system is complex, and that real transformation takes time. Let's get into this. Let's start with the concept that trips people up the most. You can be making genuine progress and still have setbacks. These two things can coexist, and understanding why requires us to look at how healing actually works at a biological level. When your body heals from cancer treatment or from cancer itself, it's orchestrating an incredibly complex process. Cells are regenerating, tissues are repairing, your immune system is recalibrating. Your nervous system is processing trauma. Your endocrine system is rebalancing hormones. None of these systems work in isolation, and none of them heal at the same pace. When we think about holistic medicine, we really look at the whole person, and we can't isolate one part of the body from the other. It's all connected. So it makes perfect sense that all of these systems are healing simultaneously, and sometimes the pacing is a little bit different. Now, let's think about wound healing. When you cut your skin, think about the visible healing, the scab forming, the skin knitting back together. That's just on the surface. Underneath, you have inflammation, cell migration, collagen deposition, tissue remodeling. Some of these phases overlap, but some take weeks. And during that process, the wound might hurt more on day 5 than it did on day 2, even though it's technically healing. Do you see where I'm going with this? The same principle applies to healing from cancer or any other chronic disease. Your white blood cell count might improve while your fatigue worsens. Your scans might show tumor shrinkage while your neuropathy intensifies. Your emotional resilience might be building even as you have more tearful days. I know it comes up a lot, but I really feel like one of the biggest lessons that cancer has taught me is the reality and the truth of paradox. That paradox exists in this world and in this life that we live, and that two things can be true at the same time. We can be walking an incredibly difficult path with a lot of dark days while something inside of us that is so full of light is growing. There's a lot of times where we have symptom mismatches where, numbers are looking okay or stable, but our lived experience just feels worse. Now, I'm going to get a little nerdy on you here for a minute. Research in psychoneuroimmunology, which is the study of how psychological processes affect the immune system, shows us that stress, sleep, inflammation, and emotional well-being are all interconnected. When one system is under strain, others can be affected. This means that a stressful week, a poor night's sleep, or even seasonal changes can create temporary setbacks in how you feel, even while deeper healing continues. Here's what I want you to remember: setbacks are not erasures. Having a difficult week does not undo any of the progress that you've made. Experiencing a flare of symptoms does not mean that you're back at square one. It means that you are in the middle of a complex process that has natural ebbs and flows. Now let's talk about plateaus, those stretches where nothing seems to be changing. No improvements on your blood work, no shifts in your symptoms, no breakthroughs in your emotional state, just a lot of sameness. Plateaus can feel like failure, especially in a culture that glorifies constant growth and visible progress. We're taught to believe that if we're not moving forward, we're falling behind, but that is not how biology works. And that, my friends, is not how healing works either. In fact, plateaus serve a crucial function. They're consolidation periods. Your body and mind need time to integrate the changes you've already made before they can continue to build on them. Think of it like strength training. Your muscles don't actually grow during the workout. They grow during the rest period that follows. The plateau, it's the rest period. There's also a concept in systems theory called punctuated equilibrium. It describes how complex systems like ecosystems, organizations, and yes, even human bodies, they don't change gradually and steadily. They go through periods of stability and then rapid transformation and then stability again. Cancer and its treatment disrupt your body's equilibrium dramatically. The plateau phase is your system working to establish a new equilibrium before the next phase of change can occur. Oh boy, can I relate to this? And probably not in the way that you might think. So actually, I'm at a plateau right now. And even though I'm further away from my cancer diagnosis than I've ever been, and by a lot of metrics, I'm better than I've ever been, it feels like I'm a little bit stagnant because I'm no longer experiencing that rapid transformation, that rapid upward trajectory. And during the time that I was experiencing that, it felt deeply healing on so many levels. And despite being in the middle of the darkest days of my life, people would notice that I almost had a glow about me. You would have never known that I was dealing with the things that I was dealing with because I looked healthy. And so now that I'm at what I would consider to be a plateau, it can sometimes feel like I'm a little stuck. But the body, the mind, the spirit, it needs time to integrate, especially when we go through all of that change, whether it's good or bad. And actually, the research agrees. And here's what it tells us: plateaus can actually predict lasting change. When improvements happen too quickly, they can often be unstable. Your system hasn't had time to adapt. But when periods of rapid change are preceded by a plateau, when, your body and mind have time to adjust, the improvements that follow, they tend to be more durable and longer lasting. So, if you're in a plateau right now, I want you to ask yourself something. What invisible work might be happening right beneath the surface? What internal shifts could be occurring that you can't even measure yet? Because the absence of visible progress, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening. It often means that there's a lot happening. It often means you're going through a period of integration and that everything underneath the surface is being reorganized. An emotional relapse is when you revisit old feelings. The usual suspects: fear, grief, anger, despair. And a lot of times they come back and you think that you'd already processed them. So where are they coming from? You have these periods of time where you feel strong and hopeful and maybe even at peace with your diagnosis. And then out of nowhere, something triggers you. It could be a scan, an anniversary, a news story, a friend's comment, and it can be little things too. Even to this day, 3 years out from diagnosis, there's certain things that I encounter mostly in a clinical or medical setting, things that I see, smell, or hear that just trigger within me deep feelings of anxiety and sadness. I know what it feels like to feel like you've lost all of the ground that you've gained. And even when you get over a lot of that initial fear, there's always a fear in the back of your mind that no matter how well you're doing, it could be ripped away from you at any point. It can feel like you're one scan away, one phone call away from going all the way back to the beginning. And for a lot of cancer patients, it's a really visceral fear that we live with every day. We are always at risk of reliving the initial traumas that we went through. But here's the critical distinction. You're not back where you started, and you never will be. No matter what, you are experiencing that same emotion, but you're not the same person experiencing it. You've come a long way. Trauma research, particularly work on post traumatic growth, shows us that healing from trauma isn't about eliminating difficult emotions. It's about changing your relationship to them. The first time you felt profound fear about your cancer, you likely had no tools, no context, no sense of your own resilience. When that fear resurfaces months or years later, you might still feel it intensely, but you also have a history now with it. You've survived it before. You know that you have coping strategies. You have evidence of your own strength, and that's the difference. Actual regression, however, it's when your disease progresses or when your physical health declines in measurable ways. This is not the same as an emotional setback. You can have disease progression while maintaining emotional resilience, and you can have emotional spirals while your body is actually healing. Oh my goodness. You can have disease progression while maintaining emotional resilience, and you can have emotional spirals while your body is actually healing. That is how warped the healing journey actually can be, guys. Come on. The challenge is that our minds and bodies are so interconnected that emotional states can manifest physically. Anxiety can cause chest pain, digestive issues, muscle tension. Grief can cause intense fatigue. Fear can suppress immune function. So, when you're in emotional distress, you might experience physical symptoms, and that can feel like regression, even when they're temporary manifestations of stress. Here's how I've learned to tell the difference. I ask myself, is this feeling familiar or is this symptom new? Familiar feelings, even intense ones, are often emotional relapses, or they could be the gifts that keep on giving, the long term side effects of treatment. And honestly, most of the time, that's what it is. But when it is those emotional relapses, it's the nervous system processing trauma at a deeper level. So here's a metric that I use, and maybe this can help you too. If I am feeling a symptom, a pain, something like that, I will first try to identify whether or not I've felt it before. And most of the time I have. Although, granted, I feel like I've had every single symptom under the sun since my diagnosis. There are a few that tend to pop up with more frequency. And most of the time I can identify where they're coming from. However, if it is something that's kind of like creeping me out a little bit and it's giving me some anxiety, I make a promise to myself. I'm not going to allow myself to feel fear around the symptom unless it persists. Now, I can't tell you how long it's safe to let a symptom persist without seeking a doctor's attention. So, this is not medical advice at all. But for me, I landed on 2 weeks. So, if I have a symptom and I'm scared about it, I say that if this symptom is here in 2 weeks, I will seek medical attention. But if it goes away, then it probably was just a side effect or something that's coming and going. And, thankfully, up until this point, it's never gone beyond that. So when we're looking for these emotional relapses or symptoms from side effects, these things kind of come and go. Anything that is persistent or pain that gets worse over time, of course, you want to seek medical attention for that. It's also helpful to remind yourself that emotional relapses do not erase emotional growth. Just because you feel afraid again doesn't mean that you haven't become braver. Just because you feel grief doesn't mean that you haven't found joy. Healing doesn't offer us permanent positive feelings. What it does offer us is expansion in our capacity to hold the full range of human emotion without being completely destroyed by it. So if you're in a hard phase right now, if you're having a setback, if you're on a plateau, if you're feeling like you've lost ground, I want you to know that this is totally normal and that I'm right there with you. That even as a loud and proud stage 4 thriver, I still have plenty of bad days. I still am terrified of scans. I still get really weirded out by symptoms that pop up. But one of the greatest gifts that I've gotten from my healing, and I'm sure that you will too, is the gift of resilience. And that in that resilience, you'll see the only way that healing actually works. Imperfectly, unevenly, and courageously. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time, and until then, keep thriving.